Hi, good afternoon. I'll begin by introducing the core idea about ONDC, and then Neeraj will take over and walk you through some of the details about how the system works. So the idea behind ONDC is really to create a commerce network that's based on two principles that we see in many other walks of life. We just don't see it in e-commerce: unbundling and interoperability. And unbundling is essentially that the entire chain of e-commerce is not done by one entity. Different entities will do different parts. And interoperability allows these entities to work with each other to complete the chain. Let's just understand that in some more detail. So this is how we understand the interoperability today. You have email systems, you have phone systems, you have banking. In interoperable systems, the two parties don't have to be in the same platform. So when you send an email, the other party could be using a different email client than you are. If you're sending money, the other party's account could be in a different bank, could be using a different app. So interoperability allows two parties to be in different platforms, in different constructs, and yet being able to interact. Commerce doesn't work that way. Commerce requires buyers and sellers to be in the same one. So what ONDC has done is built a protocol that allows the same kind of communication that takes place in email. So in email, there are components of the protocol, like an email address will be something, @ something, dot something. There's a strict protocol. But once you follow that protocol, then there is interoperability. All systems can understand each other. So that's the heart of what ONDC has created. Now what it enables is a transition from a platform-based commerce to an unbundled interoperable commerce. Every platform has broadly three kinds of activities: buyer-facing activities, where the buyer is searching for a product, adding to cart, filtering, selecting, eventually making a payment, checking out, and receiving tracking information till such time as they receive and are satisfied. Now, that's the buyer-side activities. The sellers from whom they buy have a different interface. That's where they're uploading their catalog, they're updating their inventory, they're managing their orders, or a change to an order, somebody might cancel something, somebody might want a refund. So all that is managed on the seller interface. And when there is a physical good being bought, being shipped from the seller's location to the buyer's location, then there is delivery or logistics services. Now, on a platform, all these three are part of a single entity. They are enmeshed in the same protocol that is proprietary to that organization. Now, what happens is that these systems don't talk to each other, and one platform is completely independent by itself. The other platform is likewise independent. And so if you're a buyer on one, you can't buy from a seller on another, and vice versa. But when you move to an open network solution, then you have each activity being done by an independent party. So you have the same solution. You still have buyer-side activities, you still have seller-side activities, you still have logistics. They are still connected by a protocol, but two important differences: the individual activities are done by different entities, and the protocol that connects them is not proprietary, but it is open. And that's the one that ONDC has built. Now, this is only the first level of clicking. You can actually double-click on any of these boxes and unbundle it even further. So it's not as if this is the end, that the world now will be divided into 3 where it was 1. No, the world can be divided into 15 if you like. And so each of these can be further subdivided depending on who wants to do what kind of services. The principal idea being that you don't require one party to do everything. Now, when this happens, you have a situation where multiple parties will do buyer-side activities, multiple parties will do seller-side activities, multiple parties will do logistics, all connected with each other. So now a buyer on any platform can buy from a seller on any other platform, and either party can choose a logistic provider on any other platform. It does not require one party to be on a specific platform where everybody else is also present. Now, this is not an academic rearrangement of parts, right? It might just look like, okay, we're basically doing the same thing in a different way. Actually, the idea of unbundling now unleashes some very powerful possibilities. The most important one of them is participation. Now you will have many more people participating in e-commerce where they were not even part of e-commerce earlier. So buyer applications will be ones who bring a universe of buyers. In fact, this event could become a buyer application, right? There's a lot of people registered here. And if the organizers of Phygital had their own buyer application, all of you will be shopping through that Phygital app, and you have a universe of buyers, right? So it requires a group of people who will be shoppers and a digital interface called a buyer application. If you can combine those two, you are a valid shopping application. So today on our network, we have banks, we have payment applications, we have technology companies becoming buyer application. Very soon, a telecom company will become buyer application. None of them are e-commerce companies. But they do have a best set of customers. They could be banking customers, payment customers, telecom customers, and they have the ability to build that digital interface through which they can enable shopping on ONDC. So you have people contributing buyers as buyer application. You have another set of companies who are contributing sellers. Now, they may be interacting with sellers for a variety of reasons. They could be providing telecom services, they could be providing accounting services, they could be doing their billing software. And so the billing software, which knows their catalog, knows their inventory, becomes ONDC enabled. That shop becomes visible to the network. So now you can be a shopper on a payment application buying from a seller who's on a billing application seamlessly. And either of you, of course, we've not enabled the either solution today. Sellers are the only ones choosing logistics. But as we keep adding components to the network, there'll come a time where either the buyer or seller could decide who the logistics partner is. So you as a shopper could choose whether you want to pick it up, you want to choose who the delivery partner is, or you want to defer to the seller that the seller can pick whoever they want. Today, right now, we've only enabled the sellers choosing that, but that's the unbundling idea. So now what you get is a network which is being created by different people contributing, buyers, sellers, and logistic providers. No one party is doing everything. Now, this used to be a very big intellectual debate before we actually launched. Each time we would present, people would say, but how would it work? A shopper is on one application, a seller is on another application, delivery is somebody else. What if something goes wrong? What if the wrong stuff comes? Right? And I'm sure many of you would have read the news about what happened a few days ago, where there was a comparison on pricing between us and the other food options. And there was an explosion of orders. Now, all in the conversation around price differences, what got missed is the fact that Ondc from a less than 100 orders a day back in January went to more than 10,000 orders a day. Suddenly, all those intellectual questions on will it work, how will it work are gone. People ordered, people got food delivered, people enjoyed their food, and suddenly the intellectual barriers are gone. So today's truth is that ONDC is no longer theory, it's no longer a concept, it's actually a working, thriving network. And so the evidence of that is the participants who are live today. And this is only the starting point. This is who's live today. Even with this pool of people, we can see now visibility of more than 100 million buyers. And when a player like Airtel comes and joins, that's another 500 million buyers to join. If Jio Telecom comes and joins, that's another 500 million. Suddenly you'll have 1 billion shoppers on the network, which is way more than any e-commerce entity in the country today, no matter what they're selling, whether they're hailing cabs, ordering food, or home products, doesn't matter. So this is not being built by one organization, which is why it can end up becoming much larger, because it is bringing in and combining contribution of everyone. Right? And so not only these companies, but we have more than 1,000 organizations in various stages of conversation. Not possible to show all the logos, but again, here you will see names which are not necessarily e-commerce entities. So the idea of an unbundled interoperable universe allows this broad participation. And because of that broad participation, it allows many models to get created. So what will be the method by which a particular sale will take place? Or what does it take to create a new service? Right? There's a lot of rage that is being created by ChatGPT. But ChatGPT could be real because information is available freely on the net. If OpenAI had to buy that information, it was not available on the net, they probably would not even have gotten started. So because a lot of stuff is available in the public domain as free starting point, then the next level of service can come very efficiently. Somebody just had to build that AI engine. That's it, nothing else. Right? And train it on that information that was available. So when you make something available, something else can be built on top of it. If those of you who were in the earlier session would have heard my phone example. When the camera came on the phone, it was a very, very basic camera. In fact, it was worse than the cameras you could buy. Today, it's far superior to digital cameras, so much so that digital camera as an industry is gone. But it's not just about taking pictures. You have now internet on the phone, and it's gone from 2G to 3G to 4G. Soon we'll have 5G. But now you can do video conferencing. And when the first camera came at the back, which was a very small, basic daylight camera, nobody envisaged video conferencing. It's very hard to picture several steps ahead. What you can be sure is that where there is a digital capability created, something will happen. And I think if we're all here 1 year from now, we will be talking use cases that we couldn't think of today. So that's the promise that ONDC offers as an unbundled interoperable network. Let me just end with an explanation of how the flow of the purchase takes place before I hand over to Neeraj. So this is a schematic of the components of the network. You have buyers who are connected through a buyer application. Right? So a microcosm of what we experience today that is similar to this is when we buy flight tickets. Airlines are the sellers. They are the common sellers no matter who's the travel agent. But we can go to different travel agents to pick those tickets. We can go to an online travel agent. We can go to a physical travel agent. The flights are the same. So on ONDC, there is a pool of sellers which are connected to seller networks. They are common pool, regardless of which is the buyer application. Buyer application is only your shopping agent. It's like your concierge. This could be a mobile app. It could be a desktop app. It could be a web page. It could be an IVR. It could even be a voice software like a Siri or an Alexa. It just needs to be able to communicate with the network through a digital means. That's it. Now, when a buyer is looking for a product, sellers are classified by category, right? Because you don't want to send every search to everybody. You don't want to send a T-shirt request to Chroma, and you don't want to send a food delivery order to an airline. So you want to make sure that the sellers are categorized by category so that the searches go to the right place. That's the job done by the registry. So the registry is where the sellers and the seller applications are hosted in terms of their address and their contact. When a buyer is looking for a t-shirt, you get sent to apparel catalogs. If the buyer is looking for cooking oil, you get sent to Kirana catalogs. If the buyer is looking for a charger, you get sent to electronic catalogs. Two things get broadcast: what the buyer is looking for and the commercial terms that the buyer expects. I want 3% commission, I will pay when the delivery gets completed, etc., whatever those terms are. Those two things get broadcast to all the seller applications which have sellers of that category on their, in their roster. The seller applications do two things. They check whether the product is there in one of the catalogs and are those commercial terms acceptable. If both are a yes, then the catalog entry travels back to the buyer side. The buyer side receives multiple such entries, presents them, allows the buyer to filter, select, add to cart, make a payment and through. So the buyer's journey is exactly the same. In fact, if you try out, how many of you have tried ONDC, by the way? Actually placed an order? Okay, so you would realize that the journey is no different, right? It's, the interface might be slightly different, and you will experience multiple interfaces, and hopefully you'll find many more options than just the two options you have pretty much in every category today. You'll find many more options. So the buyer's journey has not changed. What has changed is how it got met with. Different entities came together to contribute and complete that. Now, automatically, this raises many questions, but let's first go through the technical side of things, and then we'll take the questions.
How do I operate? Just this one. Yeah. Thank you, Shireesh. Am I audible? Yeah, thank you. So, just to start with, what does ONDC own in the whole network that we've shown? Just one piece, registry, which is the list of the network participants, which are the buyer app and the seller apps and the seller on records. That is all the ONDC owns. Rest, all the things in this slide are basically from the network participants or the third-party vendors who wants to transact on the network. This is another way of showing or depicting the ONDC network. So there are multiple buyer apps operating in different areas, may hyperlocal, local, logistics, agri. How do they find or discover the seller apps? Through the gateway. So gateway is the only piece through which the discoverability happens on the network. And there, the function of the gateway stops. And rest, everything is peer-to-peer. So these are the foundation principles from the tech side. One, we do not compromise on decentralization. Nothing in ONDC is centralized, not even registry. Registry is going to be federated, which is going to be owned and operated by, in a, like a Web3 environment by the various network participants. Interoperability is the function that Shireesh talked about. Openness, everything that we do, it's given to the network participants. They give their inputs, feedback, we incorporate, and it's a co-creation activity. It's not something that we are mandating or we are recommending, nothing like that. It is only the guidelines, and with the guidelines also come from the network participants. How do they want to operate? Facilitation, that is the role that we've done. Minimal governance, there is nothing that we do. We don't mandate anything. The network participants are requested to follow the laws of the land, and nothing is from us is audited. The democratization is what Shireesh talked about. I would like to harp on the word innovation. Say, when we are unbundling this buyer app and the seller apps, there are a lot of things that a buyer app can do. For example, say we have heard about one of the initiatives called Bhashini, wherein it can be a voice-enabled command in many languages, 16 for now, which are the scheduled languages. They can operate with that. So this has been implemented in one of the buyer apps. Now we go into a depth in the technical, how does technical architecture look like? So we have 5 layers. So I'll start with the bottom layer, which is the specification and the support layer. So what does ONDC provide? ONDC provides a set of APIs, reference models, reference architecture, data models, messaging format, and transaction mechanisms. We do not provide any application either on the sides. What we provide is some reference applications which can be leveraged by the various network participants to get onboarded onto the ONDC faster. Then is the certification layer. Say, this is a very important layer. Say, how do we make sure that the network participants who joins the network does not derail the network? Because it's a network where the checks and balances have to be very strict. Because if one of the network participants is not following the guidelines or the rules, it may disrupt the whole network. The third one is the infrastructure and security layer, where we provide the guidance that what should be the infrastructure and what is the security mechanism. And even the keys, say we do not allow or we do not enforce any DSCs, which is a digital certificate. What we are doing is a application-based XCED25519 or a ED25519. And as quantum computing and other new technologies come in, we can just change it, and there is no connection, or we have delinked or decoupled with the infrastructure itself. Then is the network and the transaction layer. This is how I spoke about the buyer app speaking to the seller app using the gateway. And then there is the application layer. Currently, we have apps. Tomorrow it will be Alexas, remote sensors coming into picture, the IoTs. So this is how it looks like. So we have essentially been, we have created an exchange layer of backend protocol. So backend is a commerce protocol, which is not just limited to digital commerce. So we are into digital commerce and mobility. We are going to go into services segment like travel, hospitality, and so on and so forth. So what does it have? It basically divides the whole protocol into 4 stages or 4 phases, which is discovery, order, fulfillment, and post-fulfillment. I'll go much deeper in the later part of it. On this, we have created a extension layer. Now, what does the extension layer contain? So it is an extension to the layer to the base layer, which talks about, which generalizes it or which focuses on the India-based architecture. For example, we are coming up with the regulatory and the statutory requirement that should be fulfilled by the protocol. For example, in the case of a veg or a non-veg, you should have a FSSI number. So such very nuanced view. Is it mandatory? No, it is not mandatory, it is recommended. Then, then the model or the protocol, backend protocol did not have a issue and grievance mechanism, which is going to play a very critical role. And that is where we build up APIs for issue and grievance, reconciliation and payment. We created a mechanism that how and who can register in the open network, in the ONDC network to transact. So those all policies have been defined by us. But when we say we have defined, it's the network, the set of network participants, ecosystem participants have defined together. Nothing has been mandated by ONDC. Then there is open data, because it's a digital public good, digital public infrastructure like UPI and others. Say the specifications are readily available, anybody can use it and create their own networks as well. Now, there are few tenets of it. So I'll just take one example. The COVID certificate, say it is an open specs on W3C standards. Say we intend to use the same in open networks through the verifiable credential like badging. So those are the things that will be done here. Now, when we do a transaction, how can we be sure that it is legally valid? So every transaction is digitally signed by the private key of the buyer app or the seller app. So that is where the digital signatures are done, and every transaction is legally valid in the court of law. Then Shireesh talked about the bilateral negotiation. So once the buyer app and the seller app starts transacting, do they have the power to communicate digitally? For example, if I have left with, say, 10 units instead of 100 units, I would like to sell it at a proper higher rate. Can I do that? Yes, a seller can do that. In case of another COVID scenario when we had oxygen cylinders going down, can they increase the cost and negotiate a better rate? Yes, they can, through this protocol itself. That provides. Who will take the payment? Buyer app or the seller app or the seller? Can we negotiate that? Yes, we can negotiate that. Data and security, data privacy and security by design. We encrypt every PII or the BII in the protocol itself. We have used open security protocols, but at the same time, they are the best global standards. We have not compromised on that part. Then global interoperability. Say, can this network interact or transact with another network in somewhere in, say, US or Europe? Yes, we can do that. How many APIs? Just 12 of them. Now, the first side is search, select, all this. The first part is buyer app side, and the lower side is from the seller app sides. All are async APIs. asynchronous. So, but to give a better user experience, the buyer app defines the TAT. For example, if they send a select request, which is a cart creation one, how much time does it? They want to give 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 1 second. That will depend on the buyer app to customize their user experience. Say, I just want to give you one example that how does it work. A buyer app, say, searches for a iPhone on a buyer application. The buyer app relays it to the gateway. The gateway checks the registry, which are the seller apps which are selling a electronics item, or because that is the level at which we have currently configured to the. So they will select which are the seller apps who are sending the iPhone. They will relate to the seller apps, and the seller app, whosoever wants to respond to the request basis the terms and conditions and the availability and the place where it is serviceable, they can do that. And accordingly, the buyer app or the buyer to the buyer app can choose which one to buy. Now this the simple, very simple order placement. How do we do that? Say using a select API. Once the buyer selects, the buyer application relate to the seller app, gives the quotation, negotiate other terms and conditions by when it will be delivered, and they can choose when do they want to deliver it. So they may choose a logistics player who is delivering in within 2 hours and maybe taking 100 rupees more as compared to the one that is delivering 2 days later. So the buyer gets a lot of options to choose from. Say, another thing is, say, once the payment is done, how does a payment get transferred? The money gets transferred from the buyer app to the seller app. So there are some guidelines that we have come up with, in which we have created a protocol by which the buyer app specifies that how much time will it take for them to credit the amount to the seller app. And this whole process goes from the collecting NP to the counterparty NP. And we have created a reconciliation and the settlement protocol here. All is done in an automated manner. If there are breaches, they can define how much penalty will it be, and it will be automatically be collected. And now in the case of a return, how will the money flow back to the buyer app and then to the buyer? So those also have already been incorporated in the protocol itself, where there's a correction flow. Say suppose if the buyer app by mistake deposits more money, then they can claim back that amount of money back from the seller app. See, now we have talked about that what is ONDC as a concept and what do we need to do. But how do we come to a ONDC network? So it's a very high level view. I will go into the tech part of it. So it's the introduction to the ONDC, then do a role selection, which is buyer app, seller app, logistics player. We can choose multiple ones as well. And then there are some other roles like technology service providers who is helping the various NPs to onboard themselves. Then there is a participation form, implementation planning, where ONDC team helps the various network participants to come on board, help them with the queries, and if there are any questions, and say every domain is unique. So there are category leads in our team who helps them define their journeys in ONDC. Then we have the implementation perspective, the technology, the policy, and the operations part of it. The best part is the D part, community engagement. So what we as team has really worked on is, it's not just the ONDC team who responds to the queries. It is the collective network who responds. For example, there was an issue with the Golang language where there was facing some issue with the encryption keys. One of the network participants said, I have implemented the same, let me help you with. So there are umpteen number of such cases where one network participant is helping the other participants to come to the network. Then we have sandbox environment, pre-prod, and the prod environment, just to make sure before a network participant comes to the ONDC network or in the production, they have done due testing and they're compliant to the network. Now, how does a tech life cycle looks like? So the similar way, but it is more on the tech part of it. Say the single repository that we have is GitHub. Everything is in GitHub. Even one line of, say, I'll just give you an example. A network participant came up with the idea of how can we optimize search. So instead of we doing it, they just posted it on the GitHub, and then the conversation started. This is how ONDC works, and this is how we grow. So it is the collective wisdom and not the wisdom of just 5 or 10 odd people. What we as a team has done is we have put some strong checks and balances, a process just to make sure that once the network participant is onboarded, they have done proper due diligence on the quality assurances, basis the domain that they are in. If they are in multiple domains, they have to go through their own set of compliances. The onboarding models. One is a bespoke model, say an organization like, say for example, Zomato. Zomato says, I have my own system. I want to come to the ONDC network. They may develop their APIs catering to their backend system. But then there is our technology service providers who see a lot of value. They says that we are going to provide either a SaaS-based product, or we can also give you a customized bespoke solution. Say many HULs and the ITs have used this part. Then there is other adapters like e-commerce platforms like Shopify, Vinculum, WooCommerce, BigCommerce. So these are very Magento. These are very standards platform. So what they have done is, many of the organizations who are using Shopify, say there are a few TSPs who have come said that we are going to build adapters for the Shopify, and they have built adapters, and many NPs are coming like that way. Boat, Wow, just to name a few. And they are working seamlessly. So a buyer does not even know whether they are doing through a ONDC network or is it through the store of the Wow or the boat ones. Then just to expedite the whole process, what we have done is we have created white label buyer app and the seller app. Say many of the NPs, instead of creating something from the scratch, they use our buyer apps and the seller apps. Now, basically there are 3 layers. One is the core protocol, which is the ONDC layer. Second one is the client layer, and the third one is the UI UX. The third one is almost set because these are standard set of APIs. The client layer, we give them certain bits of pieces, but they are free to update, modify, basis their workflow. And the UI UX is the basic one that we provide. But yes, what we have done is some of the problems that everybody faces, like how do we do a WebSocket one? So we have created something like a SSE, server-side messaging, where it's smarter and it's faster. This is the same thing which Shireesh depicted. So these all have come. Say, why this slide again? Say, it shows the diversity of the implementation. Some are bespoke, some are using SAPs or Oracles of the world, some are using TSPs, some are very, very new to e-commerce. Say, all are operating and functioning seamlessly on the ONDC network. None of them have the same tech stack. None. And that's the beauty of it. It's something which is live and running. I am a seller. How do I join the ONDC network? Say, there are multitudes of options. One, we can come through as an ISN, which is inventory seller node, where I'm a very, very big brand like say a Wow or a Boat, and says I just want to maintain my own inventory. I don't want to come through one of the MSN, which is the market seller node. They can come through that. The other one is there are multiple market seller nodes, like say a Magic Pen or Zomato or a Swiggy. They can integrate with one of them in the F&B segment, but there are others like say the Amazons and the Flipkarts of the world, where I'm just taking few names just for the sake of conversation. So there is where they can choose, and they can integrate with them. And there are many buyer apps who wants to come and join as a seller app as well. Now, the ONDC big picture. Say, it's a little cluttered, sorry for that. Say, this is whole ONDC. On the left-hand side is the demand side, where is the government, the consumers, the businesses. And we have also implemented on a B2B side. So it's a business to business. It's not just a B2C, but it's a business to business as well. And with government platforms coming to the picture, Shireesh talked about the SIDB and the others, MSME or the GEM, which is a government e-marketplace. They will be integrated as well. This is what ONDC is. On the right-hand side is the supply side, then domains and the services. We are not just into product. It can go to product and services and productized services as well. Say add-ons to it. For example, more warranty. Say I want a BNPL or other features which will also be able to EMI. Now this is a transaction level contract which we have essentially taken from the backend piece. Every transaction is digitally signed using the keys of the sellers and the buyer app. So in case if there is any dispute, we have ODR providers, the online dispute resolution providers, who will help. And we have created evidence APIs discussing with the various participants how will they resolve these issues. And this will all be done digitally. There will be no in-person communication. On the left-hand side is what does ONDC provides. So ONDC team helps with market creation, which is fleet on street, because many of the network participants are new in this area. They are doing it for the first time. Can we support them? Yes. Say cataloging is a service. The Kirana store, if I say, I want to come, but I just can't pay any money. Can I do that? Yes, you can do that. So we are creating those ONDC academies, bringing more people on board, dissemination information. Then on operation support, say many of the tech service providers says that we are very good with tech, but how do I manage operations in a very, very complex environment like commerce? How do I amicably resolve any disputes? This is where the operations teams kick in and supports them. It's a service that is being provided. Then we are providing a number of guidelines and best practices. Are they cast in stone? No. We always take feedback, and we are always taking feedback. And whenever there is a new release from our side, we ensure that these guidelines and best practices are disseminated in the right manner. The other part is tech enablement. So we have created utilities, toolkits, tech starter guides so that it can be onboarded. I'll just give one example. Say for the adapters that have been built, how much time will it take for a entity who's in Shopify? Maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That's it. And you are onboarded on the ONDC network. It can be even faster depending on the team size that you have and the capabilities that you have. Then we are the source of it is one of the things is certification framework. What we have done is, as we grow in many categories, many domains, every category and domain requires or it has its own nuanced views. So to ensure that we are bringing certification agencies who are going to ensure and who's going to validate whether the new participant or the existing participants are complying to the guidelines and the club rules. I'm not saying here the policies and the laws. These are the club rules that have been defined by the network participants themselves. And we as ONDC are just a facilitator. I'll just take a pause here. This is about certification framework, that how does it work, and then network observability. This is the last slide from my side. Say in a decentralized world, when you don't have the access to the data, how do we ensure that everybody is complying to the standards? So what we are doing is we are asking the network participants that please collectively let's work towards the data, the metrics that each one of you will give, just to make sure that together we are strengthening. And we say together we are strengthening. We as ONDC is not taking ownership of any data. We just take aggregated data just to make sure that everybody is complying to the standards and to the API specifications. And this also has a feedback part of it. So if any NP or a researcher says that why don't you implement this? Why aren't we going? Say those will be assessed, evaluated by the various network participants, and just to make sure nobody leaves behind, it will be a collective action, and then it will be implemented onto the network. So that's it from my side. Any queries? Just say these are two buyer apps. Sorry, these are two buyer apps. Sorry for the info. They're two buyer apps. It's just one seller who's connecting through one seller app. But both the buyer apps are able to order the same big spicy paneer wrap at different prices. The seller app may be giving a same price, but basis who the consumer is, the buyer app may customize their own freebies, attaches or gives their own add-ons to make the deal sweeter. So this is how ONDC, and we can show you the demo if you require. That's it. Thank you.
How does ONDC ensure that, whenever a catalog is being sent over to a buyer app and when the actual buyer searches for a product, our product comes in the first set, how the sorting happens?
Yeah.
Typical marketplace question.
So, is this on? So we're leaving the sorting algorithm to the buyer applications. Okay. Now, this situation is very different from the current marketplace situation because current marketplace, first of all, are a closed system. And two marketplaces cannot be compared. You do not know what the universe is. But here the universe is identical. The seller universe is identical. And so if you can directly search on two different buyer applications and see what the outcome is. It's like searching on two travel applications and looking at the flight order. First, you will see one is showing 45 flights and the other is showing 30 flights, something is wrong. Then if one is constantly pushing one particular airline over the other, that will not be a good experience. So in open systems, the behavior and the access to customers will make the actions from buyer applications different. Good buyer applications that will survive will be the ones that will help the buyer make the selection rather than push a selection. Because remember, in a one-sided network, the buyer application only has buyers. That's their only paying customer. The sellers are not with them. Sellers are being brought by somebody else. So if you annoy your only franchise that is there, how will you continue? Right? And so it takes a while getting used to the idea that people will actually serve the customer now, whereas earlier with a two-sided platform, their loyalties could be divided. But also in an open network and in the world of social media, I'm sure there'll be at least 1,000 people whose only job is to just search across multiple platforms and publish their results. So you will know who's giving objective, customer-friendly search results and who's forcing a certain set of results. So I think the inherent design of it will force it to be much more...
But don't you think that will also have an impact to the performance marketing, especially because it's like the inputs or the keywords buying what we do generally in fashion.
Yeah.
Right?
So the existing e-commerce is where two worlds have actually collided and we don't realize that, right? So there is the world of advertising because there is an audience, you want to advertise to an audience. And then there is a place where shopping is taking place. Pre-digital platforms, these two worlds used to be different. And there was never any confusion. So you advertise to consumers, drove demand, they would go to places to buy and buy. The places to buy were completely decentralized. There were millions of outlets. So now, which outlet are you going to pay what? When the digital platforms came, you had a single entity that was both the amalgamation of the audience and also the shopping channel. And therefore, they commanded, and you have those two worlds sitting together. But I think we are again headed to a world where you have multiple paths to the customer. In fact, it's even more democratic than the physical world. Because in the physical world, in this outlet, only this set of people can come. In a different town with that outlet, a different set of people can come. So although it's decentralized, they're not fungible. But in the digital world, they're completely fungible. So today, I have all those apps on my phone, or I can go to the website. So any of those 8 websites I can use to shop, or apps I can use to shop. Now, as a seller, which of those 8 will you pay to reach me? It doesn't make sense. So the idea of multiple pathways automatically will lead to a very different approach, where today brands are actually spending money 3 times. And you should be delighted at this network that you don't have to spend the second and the third, because you spend to build your awareness so people are aware of you. When they search, then you want to buy the search word also, because you don't want your competitor to buy your brand. Otherwise, you are spending to drive awareness and they get the search results. And then once after search, you get the shopping platforms and you go there, you have to buy your own brand a 3rd time because you don't want somebody to buy it there. So you're spending in 3 places today. Now, once you come to an open network, hopefully where you spend in the 2nd and 3rd places will start to come down. And so your marketing costs for the same end result should actually get sharper. So be happy that you don't have to now do that performance marketing inside a shopping platform to push your thing. That you're freed from at least that part of it. But honestly, even I can't predict how this whole system will play itself out. So your guess is as good as mine. I think we'll wait and watch. But I do think that once you have a decentralization, multiple paths, the costs of marketing through a sales channel will start coming down.
Because I could see that, the buyer apps also have Flipkarts, Mintras, and everyone. Eventually, right now, what they do is the same performance marketing, just to see, as you said, it's a continual evolution.
So in a closed system, that makes sense. But when it is open, then it's a moot point on how that will play out.
And can I also, attach my loyalty program to this one?
Your is in who?
I mean, my brand's loyalty.
So that's also actually a very interesting world, right? Now, let's say you're a seller and you had currently as a shop or as a
So we are
super-
Globus.
Right. So you have your own loyalty program. So anybody who's shopping on your shops is doing it. Now, you can replicate that here, which is as a seller, you can start logging in those points. So that becomes a currency that can be redeemed. Of course, that requires the buyer to share their information with you, because only then you can let them know whether what their points balance is and how they can redeem. So that becomes a buyer media. But now you have an opportunity for a cross-seller, cross-buyer platform loyalty program. Today, implementing that is very complicated. This is sort of like getting Star Alliance points. So I can fly any airline on Star Alliance, collect points from anyone and redeem them on any other.
Correct.
Right? And so I think we will see much more flexible and therefore wider loyalty programs to emerge. I think we'll be limiting if we say we'll just simply take existing loyalty program and bring it to the
doesn't
network.
make
You can
sense.
do that, but that will be under-exploiting the opportunity.
No, but there was one API which is relative to rewards and something.
Rating. It was a
Rating.
Rating.
API.
Okay.
Rating of the seller and the product.
Yeah.
So, but there is no response API from the brands if the customers are facing any kind of an issue, right?
No, there is. There is. In fact, say there is going to be a rating, and then how do we are going a step beyond. Say all this data will become an open data, and it will be given to say something like a TransUnion, and they come up with a scoring mechanism or a badging mechanism. This is a gold customer or a silver customer according to a particular independent agency. That is how it will unfold.
So if you think about what happens in the financial world,
Yeah.
the P&L information is available, that's public, and you can judge whether to invest or not. There could be a rating agency that looks at that P&L information, their own other algorithm, and say this is worth investing. Somebody else might look at the same stock and say divest. Somebody else might say hold. So with the same core data, you can have additional layers of perspective. So what Neeraj is saying is we'll provide the basic rating components and basic network performance metrics. So rating is judgmental. Somebody judges whether you were good or not. Performance is non-judgmental. How many times did you ship on time? How many of your orders had a complaint? How many of your complaints got resolved? That's performance data. Then somebody could build that plus additional knowledge and say, I'm reading comments about them in social media. Therefore, this particular seller, I will provide an AA plus rating, because they have very few complaints, they have very good social media, plus their network rating is good, right? So there's a composite. So many forms will emerge, and then you will decide which one you want to work with as your guide.
Because according to me, the future of retail stands on three big pillars. One is reviews or ratings, and the other one is response by the brands, and third is the rewards. So because that will redetermine the entire future of the retail. Though we build any tech, but still the underlying principles are those things. Right?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Come help build the reward on ONDC, the open network.
Yes.
Thank you for the offer.
Yeah.
People can't hear you, and even I can't. Use the mic, please. I think maybe only your neighbor can hear you.
Sure. I got two questions. One, what is the kind of transaction of the that the customers are saving in ONDC platform? Whether it's only a transaction or customers, what level of customer data is being stored? Second thing, you are mentioning about some white labeling stuff on the this thing, so that I don't need to go to a seller app to use your API. So can you just elaborate on that particular thing?
So the first thing I said was ONDC is not a platform, it is a network. We do not own any infra except registry, which has the information about the buyer app and the seller apps. Every transaction is P2P, peer-to-peer, a buyer app to the seller app. ONDC does not have any data. The only data is through the network observability, which is an aggregated data or a technical data just to figure out that as a network, how are we doing? Say suppose there are business errors, technical errors. So we aggregate the data just to strengthen the network.
So if there is any issue in this thing, ONDC will not come into play. And
ONDC is not going to play. That is where the agencies like ODR come into picture. So if there is some problem between the two entities, it is not going to come to the ONDC. So first step is going to be they try to solve among themselves. Then there is a GRO, grievance redressal officer. In case they are not able to do that, then there will be a ODR agency kicking in, which are going to be impaneled through a empanelment process. And the last one, if they do not resolve it, then they may go to a court to resolve it. So this is how the workflow will look like. No data, nothing. So if you ask me how many transactions are done in a ONDC network, say the buyer app and the seller app tells us. If they are lying, they are lying. So sorry, we can't do anything about that.
What about that white labeling stuff? Dimension?
Say many of the entities who own the consumers, as well as on the seller side. They want to be onboarded onto the ONDC network as fast as they can. So what we have done is we have created some white label reference apps, which are the buyer app and the seller app, say for different domains, say retail for now or mobility for now. So any of the buyer app, for example, say JioMart. JioMart may use some of our reference application features and functionalities embed into their buyer app and just then roll out. How soon it can be done? Very fast. Until unless, say somebody starts from scratch, I want to build on my own, then they may take their own sweet time. Say if they want to do a POC in the ONDC network, they just can take a white label app from us, just change few colors, just put their logo and just start working on it.
So do you charge anything from seller or buyer
No,
or anything?
none.
ONDC is currently not charging.
As
That's
UPI is-
that's not to say it will never charge in the future. But again, going back to the registry example, so when you take a URL, you pay a registry fee, which is a very small part of your next part of the overall business. So the thought is that if at all ONDC does charge, and it will do only to recover costs. We are a non-profit organization, Section 8 company. So if we do charge, it will be a very, very small fraction of the transaction or a registry fee or some such combination. It will definitely not even prevent the small sellers from being on the net. So if we do charge, it will be a very rounding error in a way.
Just one more thing to add. Nothing for the white label buyer app and the seller apps. We are not charging any subscription fee or any fee for that.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm from Cipla and very eager to be a part of ONDC. MDs also promoted and called it a platform to be at. My question is two questions actually. One is how is ONDC looking at tackling counterfeit disbursements, and second is where do you see brands like Godrej and Cipla's how do you see them participating on your platform? We get it a point that it's beneficiary to a local manufacturer or a local retailer, but a brand like ours, and we don't want to miss out on this ride. How do you see us being your partners?
Sure. So brands are joining, right? Unilever has joined, UShop is on the network, ITC has joined, ITC Store is live, Procter & Gamble has joined, PG Shop is live, Boat has joined. So brands are joining, and then smaller brands, Wow Science and so on. Now, all businesses have created some well, not all, many businesses have created D2C operations. Why did they do that? Because the current e-commerce is very, very expensive. And as they see that expensive e-commerce take a greater share of their overall pool, so there is traditional trade, there is modern trade, there is e-commerce, you're seeing an expanding role of a less profitable channel. Right? And so they've started D2C operations because then they can protect some of that margin. Except D2C doesn't get very big traffic. Now, by connecting the D2C operation here as a seller, you are accessing the buyer traffic. So brands get a chance to show their full catalog because channels don't show their full catalog. They'll take their best-selling items. So brands get to show their full catalog. They get to get first-party customer data because they are the sellers. So they get customer information legitimately and legally. And third, they're able to access a large buyer universe. So it is solving all the problems that D2C was not able to solve. And it's also addressing the reason why they created D2C in the first place as an alternative to e-commerce. Having said that, all brands are also equally clear that no individual brand with their distribution points can compete with the broad trade. Right? So for Cipla, looking at your OTC businesses and your RH businesses going through medical stores across the country, you will never have that many pickup points. What we think, and this is my thought, not necessarily a proposal, is that over a period of time, this system will balance out in a way where all the common good selling items will flow through the general trade, and companies will stock their specialty items because they're not very efficiently distributed. That's probably where it will net out. But pharma companies are working with us to come live. FMCG companies and electronic companies are already live. So it makes immense sense for brands to come as themselves, but also work with us and get your retail trade. So for pharma companies to get the chemists you work with to be on our network, exactly, as our FMCG companies working with coming together. So the two cola majors, Coke and Pepsi, are actually getting their A retailers on our board, not coming as themselves or as their bottlers. So this is a multi-tier system. In fact, very soon we will have retailers buying from distributors also on ONDC. So you have retailers selling to consumers and retailers buying from distributors. So all legs of commerce will be on the network. Come fast is all I can tell you.
Yeah, we are almost there. I mean, that's why.
Oh, you asked about the frauds also.
Yeah,
So look, policing is not our mandate, right? And there is a certain set of steps that we follow, but in the end, there is responsibility on other parties. So we will vet the seller application before we onboard them. We'll do their KYC and we'll also validate their applications. So both from a software standpoint and a legal entity standpoint, they're correct. The seller applications are required to similarly validate the sellers they onboard. But not everybody is honest, right? Somebody can be naughty. So I can show the legitimate Cipla products, get registered as a legitimate medical store, and then go to some manufacturer and say, now that I'm registered, boss, give me the fake stuff and do it. You can't stop that, but you can police it and take action. Same in physical retail today, right? So who polices that? Brands have to be vigilant, the law has to help, and so many other parties are responsible for it. ONDC is no more responsible than a phone call might be responsible for an extortion call. Right? You will not hold Airtel or Jio responsible that, oh, somebody used your network to give me an extortion call. Right? So the network is only passing communication. But what we can do is if you want to embed certain checks and you want to utilize the network to find it quickly, that certainly will be, but the responsibility will be yours.
Thanks. I mean, that's how even Amazon and Flipkarts operate. Could you say that this is why brands like legacy brands or reputed brands have this fear of participating with online platforms because they don't take the ownership? We face a lot of problems of counterfeit products getting sold on Amazon and Flipkart, although they've just started pharma. It's not been much time. Even not just in pharma, but our OTC range also. Like we get a lot of complaints. We have set up a team to handle such kind of complaints. Would ONDC consider, going beyond for brands like ours, for manufacturers who can own up that piece that, okay, we will 100% procure from one channel rather than
But we are not procuring, right?
Yeah.
We are only an exchange.
So
the seller applications are, and brands have that question. But you have to be mindful, right? So will you personally validate as a company every single medical store having genuine products or not? I don't know if you have the mechanism to do it. Because if somebody is buying from your legitimate distributor selling the legitimate product, but you do not know them, would you want to unvalidate them?
So,
That's also a challenge. So I think we'll work with brands and let's figure out a mechanism. The good news is that a lot of best practices have already been solved for. We are anyway bringing those onto the network. And so whatever practices emerge on managing fakes, we will enable them. But we are not the police. That's what I want to say.
I get that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, I just wanted to ask you, suppose if I am a seller, can I be a buyer also?
Yes, you can. So the example I just gave, a retailer is a seller, but the retailer is buying the same product from the distributor. So the same party can be both a buyer and a seller of the same product or of a different product. So I could be a restaurant selling food and I could be buying grains and cooking oil. So I'm buying my input. So same party can be buyer and seller, and it happens all the time. All of us are sellers, all of us are buyers.
Similarly, suppose we are also the manufacturer. We are also the manufacturer of shoes, right? So we have a lot of brands on the shoes front. Now,
Yeah, keep asking.
yeah. So now, if I list my product on the ONDC platform network, now how do I handle the returns? Because today the returns is the biggest problem. A lot of times the returns are coming off different brands, the customer making a lot of different type of returns. Now that become a nightmare to, even for the marketplace as well as the brand side to resolve those issues directly connecting with the customers. Now when we are going into this such a network platform where the different parties are involved, then how do we go this dispute with the customer?
So there is no.
Just adding to it, hi, Sukhminder this side. Just adding to his question, currently in the marketplace forum, we do have seller protection funds and the claim section wherein you can go and claim, But in ONDC, like you were guiding us to, there is a forum which will help us to, solve these problems. If not, then go to court. Now, in a retail format wherein you will be having thousands and lakhs of transactions, won't be possible to, address everything in the court of law, right? So, how do we secure the malfunctioning of any wrong practices that happens in terms of returns?
Sure. So first opportunity you have as a seller is to determine what terms you want to operate in. And you have the option of saying, I will operate on a no returns basis. That's entirely your choice. Or you can say, I will operate only on verified basis. So whenever my delivery partner goes to pick, they will validate it's an authentic product. If they validate it, then I will authorize the refund. So you can determine what is your method of validating that return. Today, some platforms require the customer to send a picture. So you say that I've received the wrong garment, I was looking for a red t-shirt, I got an orange one, send a picture, they will automatically authorize the refund and they will trigger the return logistics. So you as a seller determine what you want to accept. And whatever that is, that will become terms of the contract.
Okay, but largely if we see the e-com business like we do,
Sorry?
largely that we see, we are selling footwear from
Okay.
metro brands, right? It doesn't work that way every time, because if we're trying to put our terms, marketplaces obviously won't allow. Here we are getting that choice, but it will again cost us business maybe.
Correct. And so you have to determine what costs you want to bear as a business. It's not a network question, it's a business practice question. Now, if you want to allow returns, then you may also say that I will allow returns provided the item comes to me. Once it comes to me, I will validate it was mine and only then authorize it. That can be another method.
Because the issues do not always come from the customer's end, right? Like for us, we will have video and photographs for order getting processed as well as getting returned, right?
Right.
But the problem also comes from the logistic partners sometimes. You know, while we are selling the goods, it happens that it gets misplaced by the logistic firms as well. How do we ensure? Like, because there will be transactions, and I'm literally telling you, it will be into thousands and lakhs every week, month, right?
So some of these get done on a contractual basis, right? So what is your understanding with the logistics partner? Should an item be shipped by you and therefore it is already logged that they have picked it up from you, but it doesn't reach the customer? Then who's responsible? Obviously they are, because they have picked up the item, right? So you establish your rules based on how you want to do logistics, and that becomes part of the contract. Some people operate by statistics, that they just allow for a certain percentage. So I will not get into inspection, I will just accept a certain percentage. Some will buy insurance. So how you manage the protection is a combination of actions that you can decide. But it's in your hands. It's not a network question. It's a business practice question.
So we open the shop on the street. What happens on the street is being looked after by the brand itself, right?
Looked after by the
brand. The brand is responsible for how we want to operate on the platform.
Correct. So you determine on what terms you want to engage logistics, what terms you want to sell to the consumer, and then what the network can help you is that whatever terms you've agreed and they have effectively signed when the contract gets closed, then the network will help enforce that, whatever you've agreed. But we can't determine what you will agree to.
So all the variations, sorry, I'm asking too many questions. So all the variations with respect to, let's say, even if it is MOQs or it is related to the time length, duration that we allow for a customer to return the product, maybe no return, maybe 7 days, maybe 30 days, right? So all of these variations can be done there.
Yes, you can. So if you've given 7-day return and on the 8th day customer says, I want to return it, you are completely legitimately right to refuse that. And if it goes to an ODR, the ODR will rule in your favor. Because as per the terms that were burnt into that transaction, you are completely in the right. Now, in that situation, the buyer application might still say, okay, the ODR is not giving in favor, but I don't want this customer to be happy, let me refund. So these practices will come as a way of managing their own various stakeholders.
Got it.
But from a network standpoint, we just facilitate whichever way you want to do business. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I came in a little late, so I had two questions. Is ONDC a technology platform like UPI just to facilitate the transactions, or is it a marketplace?
It's like UPI.
Okay. So the information trail that is generated in case of a commercial dispute, is that legally admissible in court?
Yes, because on both the buyer side and the seller side, there is a non-reputable digital record that gets created. That is admissible, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. I think there was this section on ratings, right? So I'm assuming that the network will eventually publish logistic partner ratings. It would publish the average seller ratings, buyer ratings, and that will be the backbone of the platform.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The second thing is we spoke about contracts in the contract, let's say between a buyer and a seller. All of these eventually, given that the network is open, the contracts would also be open. From a brand perspective, I may or may not be able to offer the same terms to one marketplace or rather one seller versus another seller. Is that how that's going to happen, or would I be able to offer terms which
You're
are separate?
speaking as a brand, or
As a brand, yeah.
okay. So as a brand, you are on the network as yourself, or you're coming through some other party?
I'm saying I could be there as myself. I may
Right.
have special terms for myself. I may have special terms for someone else, who
What does
buys.
special terms for myself?
Special terms in terms of the returns, right? For instance, as a brand, I may
But
want.
who's the myself in that? So
as
you're
a
seller.
brand, as a seller, I
Right.
have, let's say, a 30-day return, this thing, which I will allow if you buy from me.
But
And
who's the me in this? So are you on the network as a seller?
I'm the seller,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
As a seller, as a brand,
Right.
I have 30-day terms.
Right.
My terms with my distribution partners, for instance, may not be, they may offer, let's say, 15 days, because that is the timeline of the journey which I will give them, right?
Okay.
That's what my contract would be
Right.
with them. Would this then be transparent, which is the contract between me and, let's say, my
Yes, it
network
would be.
partner?
Yes, it would be. So when a buyer
Yeah.
is searching for your product, your distributor will show up, you will also show up, and it might look like the same item, same price, everything, but when they check their terms, one will say 15-day, one will say 30-day. Now, it's for the buyer to determine. Your distributors may not be happy that you are competing with them, but it also may be that the distributor is closer. So while you have only a 15-day return, you get delivery in 1 day, whereas when it is coming from the company, you have a 30-day return, but it will take 3 days to come. So then the buyer can choose, do they want the item quickly with a lower part? Is there a trade-off or is not? So again, this goes back to how you want to do business. You want to
Understood.
come yourself and let your distributors come with same terms, with different terms. That's entirely your decision. But if you're both present, then both will be presented and the buyer will choose between them.
Okay. And I'm assuming the product then gets listed as the same product, essentially.
Yes.
It's the same product. Let's say
Correct.
there's
So when
an
you
E-
present your catalogs, you've built your catalog. If you make exactly the same catalog available to your distributors, you don't let them write the description, etc., then it will be the same description as well.
Okay. So the buyer then essentially, from what I understand, is that the buyer not just has to look at, like, for instance, if I go to a marketplace today, I just look at the price, the rating of the product, ideally, and I typically know what is the functionality or what is the general terms of that particular marketplace, and I place an order as a customer.
Then you would be making mistakes, sir, because I've made that mistake. I've ordered stuff,
I'm sure.
and I've discovered that it is replaceable by identical product, but I can't return it, right,
Correct.
if I didn't find the size appropriate.
Correct.
So you have to look at the details. Is it returnable? Is it refundable? Is
So
it
every
replaceable?
customer will have to list
Every
that for
SKU
every
now
order.
has a different term. So it's not at a platform level anymore,
Okay. All right.
even on the
Okay.
big marketplaces.
The second, if I can ask a follow-up around customer service, and I think that was one of the things that, while the ombudsman and the ODR is the ombudsman, I'm assuming, all of those things are in place. But practically, like a gentleman here said, that there will be a lack of orders, there will be 1,000 of complaints, so I mean, is there like a proposal to kind of streamline that, saying these are the standard terms and conditions? And these are, sets 1, 2, 3, 4. Pick one of these and just go ahead with one of these.
So we can't enforce that, right? What we can do is we can give guidances, but in the end, people have to decide how they want to do business, and they will learn as they do, right? So even in a physical marketplace, you walk into 2 stores to buy a shirt. One might say that as soon as you walk out, it's non-returnable. The other person might say, yeah, sure, want to return, come back and return tomorrow. So who wants to follow what practice cannot be a network enforcement. It has to be a seller's own choice, because different sellers will want to operate differently. And we have to give them that freedom.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
So we're out of time. Thank you for your interest. The simplest way to reach us is team@ondc.org. So if you still have any burning unleft questions, reach out to us and we'll connect you internally with the right one. Team@ondc.org. Thank you.